All right.
And our next special guest tonight is Michael Whitrow from the Real Team Property Group. Now, Real Team are a buyer's agent on the ground in Adelaide, and I'm really pleased to have Michael on the line tonight to share with us some insights, some locals' insight into the Adelaide market. So thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah, so we have just recently heard from Peter and Terry talking, I suppose, at a macro sense about what is happening in Adelaide and how it's positioned against the rest of the country. I'd love to get your insight and potentially drill down a little bit further and elaborate on the three areas that Peter and Terry have mentioned. The City of West Torrens, City of Charles Sturt and City of Salisbury, and see what your thoughts are about what are the growth drivers in those areas. So potentially if we start with the City of Charles Sturt, what are you seeing there on the ground?
Well, what we've got on the ground there, of course, is quite a long beachfront, which is always a draw card. And we have a very convenient and 2 or 3 way commute across to the Adelaide CBD. Port Road is a major highway, 3 lanes each way. We have quite a fast train back into Adelaide, which goes all the way out to Outer Harbour, actually, beyond Port Adelaide.
Sure.
All those areas are in Charles Sturt. And in between those, we've got a lot of property that is undergoing gentrification, densification, a lot of new development, new building going on, mixed with some quite old housing stock. We've got almost turn of the 20th century villas, bungalows, and so on that are still in service. They're still sound buildings. They're on quite big blocks, some of them.
Sure.
And they're highly sought after by locals here.
And what sort of, you've mentioned a quite varied mix of property, out towards the beach and closer in. So where do you think the chunk of meat is there for investors looking into the area?
I think for investors, we need to be talking in terms of spots like Richmond, Mile End, Torrensville, let me see, in Charles Sturt, Seaton,
yes.
Fulham, the Croydons, Croydon Park, West Croydon, Croydon, Kilkenny, Albert Park even.
Yes, yes.
And Hindmarsh is very close to town. You're talking, generally speaking, a little more money there, and perhaps not quite the yield.
Sure.
But Hindmarsh is good property, nevertheless.
So I guess there's a little bit
very tightly held.
There's a little bit of crossover, I suppose, with our discussion around Charles Sturt, because we are bordering their West Torrens, and that's another one of the local government areas. Are the same dynamics occurring in that region, or are there other growth drivers?
Well, almost in the middle of Charles Sturt is Adelaide Airport. There's 10 kilometres between the city of Adelaide and the beach.
Yes. In
a straight line, and you drive past the airport to get to the beach. So the airport takes a big piece out of the map, if you like, and there are certain areas around the airport that, for not so much for absolute noise reasons,
sure,
but for perceptions that are better avoided by an investor, just because they will advance in price more slowly, in my opinion, than the general suburbs. So we need to pick property that's not under the flight paths, to put it bluntly.
Yes. I guess, yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why people ask when they want to buy in the western suburbs. That's one of the dot points on their specification. You don't want to be under the flight path.
Yeah, yeah.
So we are careful to avoid that problem.
Beautiful. And I guess the third region that Terry did mention was the city of Salisbury, which is in the northern region, and it's probably a completely different type of suburb or area, or it is an entire local government area. What are your thoughts on that region?
Different demographic. It's more of a family-oriented demographic, and it's fairly mixed. On the east side, you've got there are hills and elevated with views and some quite nice homes.
Yes.
And then down on what the locals call the flat, which is really the rest of it, you've got a lot of housing stock, which is basic 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom on a 600 to 800 square metre block of land. And again, quite a bit of that is going down to some of those are being knocked over and split, and then developers are putting courtyard homes on those as well. So there's quite a mix there. There's a small amount of older stock there, pre-World War II.
Yes.
But generally speaking, you've got a median price across Salisbury that's it's around 300,000 overall. If you look carefully, and you can actually buy a property there with a price that starts with a 2 rather than a 3.
And is that attached with higher yields as well with a lower purchase price?
Probably slightly, yeah. As a general rule, the lower the price of the property, the better the yield.
Sure.
Rent, and as you know, rent and price don't move together.
I have sort of heard some mentions with Salisbury of sort of iffy employment coming into the next few years. Is one of the key drivers of employment there the Holden plant, which has obviously been closing down or coming to close down, or are there other other employment drivers?
Well, there's an interesting twist to that in my view. I've talked to locals about this. What are you going to do when Holden, shuts down and everybody's unemployed? And they said to me, well, a lot of the people who work at Holden, because of their income levels, they don't live in Salisbury or Elizabeth.
Sure.
They live in better suburbs, a little further away, and commute to work because they can afford to.
Okay. Yep.
So there will definitely be a negative impact. There's no question.
Yes.
But I'm not sure it's going to be quite as severe as the doomsayers seem to think. When you've got someone who's at a fairly basic level of skill, earning between $80,000 and $100,000 a year with overtime, they're probably not going to want to live in a house that you can buy for $250,000 or $300,000.
Yes, yeah. No, very good points, and I think that's a sort of insight looking in. You see the news story from across the country and think, that's sort of a big cost there, but then when you sort of have the local insight into where these people are based, and it changes things a little bit. And I guess, thinking, in my application with infrastructure spend and new government spend, it's, when is that utility actually going to result in property increases? And in this case, it's probably the negative. When the Holden plant is announced for closure, then there may be a bit of a drop in demand. When it's actually closed, there may be a further drop in demand, but we've probably already warned some of that drop in demand already in the market.
Yeah, some of that's already priced in.
Yes. And
I think too that it's quite often the contrarian investor who pulls ahead of his or her peers.
Sure.
And if everybody's running away because of Holden closing, that might be a time to look a little closer and pick up an opportunity. So I'm bullish on the medium to longer term.
Yes.
But have to recognise that probably in the short term, the next couple of years, it's going to be soft.
Yeah.
But I mean that doesn't. You don't run away from that. You just say, well, okay, the opportunities are a little different at the moment. Yeah.
I guess taking a step back in looking at the West Torrens and Charles Sturt areas, why do you think the growth drivers exist in those areas?
One of them is a very quick and easy commute to the city.
Yes.
Another is that there is, just to the north of Charles Sturt, there's a lot of industrial development that's occurred, and of course the beaches.
I guess we've just spoken with
associated services.
Yep, beautiful. We've just spoken with Peter, who did mention, and he was touching on gentrification themes. So people coming in and having the cafe and lattes. Are you seeing a broadening appeal of people moving into the suburb?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
A lot of little coffee shops popping up and little enclaves where people can do just what you've described and go for a stroll along the beachfront or down the linear park of the Torrens River, which runs between the city and the beach.
Yes.
Through there. And that's all been beautified and, beautifully maintained. So you've got strolls and paths and bikeways and so on.
Beautiful.
Very, very attractive.
We might take a bit of a deeper dive in a moment into some of the key suburbs. But Michael, I really appreciate your time. It's been an amazing insight into what's going on in Adelaide. For further information, Michael can be is happy to elaborate and offer any advice or conversation at the Real Team Property Group, which is realteam.com.au. So thank you for your time tonight, Michael.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks for the opportunity.